So not overstocking your aquarium is a complicated subject because the standard advice of putting 1 inch of fish per gallon of water or no more really doesn't apply. And let me poke some holes in that and explain why, okay? So let's say you have a standard 20-gallon aquarium, freshwater community aquarium. We'll start simple, okay? You could put 20 1-inch neon tetras in that aquarium, fairly successful, assuming you had adequate biological filtration that was well cycled. That's true. However, other ways of slicing up 20 inches of fish, if you will, would be 4 5-inch Tanganyikan cichlids. No way, that would never work. What about 2 10-inch Oscars? Worse yet, 1 20-inch Pacu. So you see, the inch per fish gallon really doesn't apply. Here are better ways of looking at the amount of bioload that you should put into your aquarium. Okay, there's a couple of key factors that you need to consider about each species that is already there, as well as those that you're going to add. So the first factor that you want to consider is what's the temperament of the fish that you're putting in. Are they territorial? Are they peaceful? Are they schooling? Or do they school with other like species like many tetras will? Or are they only schooling with their own and maybe temperamental with other species? That matters. That matters a lot, actually. Territoriality is also a very related part of that. If you have fish that are territorial, they're naturally going to need more space to be able to feel that security based on the amount of space that's available in the aquarium. Now, another important factor is also consider the bioload, that the fish put into the aquarium, okay? Now, what the bioload is essentially the strain on the natural biological processes that keep your tank clean that each inhabitant adds to the system, if you will. So you add a fish, it's going to respirate, it's going to eat. Some of that food will inevitably not be eaten and become waste. No matter how hard you try, there's always some waste. The fish will metabolize the food that they eat. The fish will poop, and that poop will break down through the nitrogen cycle. Not all inches of fish are equal to other inches of fish. So 10 neon tetras at 1 inch long do not produce as much waste as 1 10-inch goldfish. It's just a fact. So you have to consider that, and also the nature of the fish themselves. Some fish are known to be messier than others. I swear to you, and I don't even know how it's possible, but goldfish are a perfect example. They seem to poop more than they eat. I can't figure it out biologically, but nevertheless, they just do. It doesn't mean they're bad inhabitants. It just means that they put a heavy bioload on their aquarium. So that's the second point you have to consider when it comes to, the fish that you want to keep and how much you should stock your aquarium with. And the third is gas exchange. Gas exchange is very, very important. And this is actually more of a commentary on the tank than it is the inhabitants, although those two concepts are linked. So we'll take a 20-gallon as an example again. There are two common standard 20-gallon sizes of aquarium. There's the 20-gallon tall, which is, I think, 16 inches tall, 24 inches long, and 12 inches from front to back. And that will offer a certain amount of surface area and gas exchange to allow oxygen to enter the water and carbon dioxide to leave the water. Now, you can take that same 20 gallons and put them in a 20-gallon long aquarium, which is 30 inches long by 12 inches high by 12 inches deep, I believe. It might be 13 inches high, but nevertheless, it's about that size. Now, that's the same volume of water, give or take. There's slight differences because the manufacturers round off when they name these tanks, but it is approximately the same volume of water, but with a much, much larger surface area. Significantly larger surface area, which means much higher gas exchange. The higher introduction of oxygen into the water, the more efficient your nitrifying bacteria will be and the nitrifying bacteria colony will be, and the greater the bioload that aquarium can hold. Now, that is only relative to the species that are in there. And again, this goes back to the potential of overcrowding your aquarium. So really the best practices, if you will, okay? And this is something that's very, very important to remember. The very best practices is put as few fish in your aquarium as you're happy with. The much better solution than adding extra fish to your aquarium is either get a larger aquarium or do what we all do and just get more aquariums. because that's really the responsible right way to do it. You don't want to put so many fish in that you're pushing that limit. Even if you can get away with it for a period of time, it's never a great idea because things go bad quickly when the bioload is sort of sitting at the red line, if you will, as to what your aquarium systems can handle. So I tend to look at aquariums from an aesthetic standpoint rather than how much can I cram into it. Now, ultimately, there is no hard and fast guideline. If you're looking for a rule that'll tell you absolutely this is the maximum you can put in, you're not going to find it. But the more gallonage you have, if you will, gallonage, is that a word? I don't know. We're going to go with it. The more gallonage you have, the more gallons of aquarium water you have in your system, the greater the ratio of that is to the bioload in the tank, meaning the living organisms, primarily fish and invertebrates to some extent, but fish are the big ones, okay? The better off your system will be, and the more stable and problem-free it will be. So that's really an easy solution. There are certain species and certain biotypes that actually require a certain level of crowding for the well-being of the inhabitants. And I know that sounds crazy, but some inhabitants do very well in colony settings, if you will. A perfect example are your African cichlids, your Malawi and your Tanganyikan cichlids. They tend to be very aggressive to one another when there are just a few, but they're almost like a group of fish that all have ADD. And when you put lots of them in the aquarium, they tend to chase each other only for brief moments of time and never seem to be able to manifest any real aggression on any one individual, at least less so, and they seem to get along great. So they actually fight more when you have an aquarium with a couple than you do with a bunch. Now with that comes the caveat that you need to plan ahead. It makes it a more advanced species. You need to have more than adequate filtration, primarily the biological filtration. You need to be willing to do more frequent and more extensive water changes and just a lot more maintenance to keep that aquarium up. Now you'll see pictures and you'll see people talk about, my aquarium's doing great. I have a 75 gallon in there with 24 rummy nose tetras and 3 plecostomus and 14, alum angels, and everything's running wonderfully and it's great. It's true, it does happen for some people. But that is not good advice to go on because ultimately they really ought to have more room. So that's it. That's our deep dive in tank overcrowding. I would love to hear from you, hear about your successes, your failures. We all have them. We've all learned from them. I certainly have. And if you have any questions about stocking recommendations for an aquarium, both fresh or salt, by all means, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like what you're hearing, subscribe, because I'm going to have a whole list of videos coming here doing deep dives on other topics that are often glossed over. So we're going to talk about surface area and gas exchange and flow. We're going to talk about controlling the amount of food that you put in your aquarium. I'll do some deep dives into scientific topics about the nitrogen cycle, the interplay between carbonate hardness and pH, and lots of different things that will hopefully arm you with knowledge to be very successful. Until then, stay wet, go out and find your inspiration, and we'll see you next time.